I'd like to welcome you to another episode of A Chat with Anita and Matt. So just to give you a tiny bit of history, both Matt and I have had several businesses over the years. The businesses we currently have are just one of, I'm not even sure how many I'm up to now, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. Matt has also had successful businesses in the past, and then he has his current business now. And we were just talking about how we go about with our marketing, how we're growing these businesses, how are they different than our previous efforts before? And Matt's going to tell you a little bit about what he did before and what he's doing now. And I'm going to do the same. And the reason why we want to talk about this is we often do have pivots in our businesses with our marketing or products and services or whatever it is. But we don't often hear about what that actually looks like and what we do for it. So we decided for today's episode to have a talk about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now and let him tell his story.
Well, yeah, I might not tell you the whole story in one chunk, but it struck us just before this call that a lot of what we're doing now is moving back to what we used to do. So I've been in the digital marketing world about 4 years or so, and have studied all the platforms and bought all the tools and done everything the gurus told us to do about how to sell. And what I'm finding is now I'm just returning back to what used to work in the real world, as I call it, in businesses that I ran. I had a national laboratory that I ran at one time and a startup that I grew to a good size. And I'm finding others are saying the same thing. Folks that I respect that have been in digital marketing far longer than I have kind of gone back to the basics. And this struck me a lot. I was reading Seth Godin's new book this week, and he talks about some of these same issues. And I had a couple of partners of mine who, just as an example of going back, are talking about partnering, but not in the way that the gurus talk about it. When they say a partner, they're talking about a JV partner, and there's particular rules when you do JV partnerships, and you promote their stuff and they promote your stuff, and they have launches, and then you participate and they have leaderboards, and there's a lot of pressure. So there's specific rules of these, and they're like, no, not that. Just old school. Hey, I know 3 people that could use your stuff, or I know 3 people that I think you should talk to, and your colleagues as well. I've got 3 folks I think that I should get you in touch with. Just old school. Hey, send me a recommendation, hook me up with somebody, and have been doing this now the past couple of months. So much more successful in a couple of months than I was in the past 2 years of doing things the guru's way as far as partners go. So that's one example.
Yeah, we did an episode last week all about JV partnerships. Actually, I'm thinking about it now. Was it last week? Anyway, we will go back to that episode and find it and put it in the notes below. That specific episode about JV or joint venture partnerships. They have a really specific structure within digital marketing, and that's what Matt and I were talking about in that episode, and that he just mentioned now. That's really different from other types of partnerships that we're often used to, like Matt was describing, where it's really just one person talking with another person and seeing, hey, I have somebody here that can really benefit from what you're doing. Before we go any further, Matt, you had mentioned Seth Godin's book, but you didn't give the title of it. And, someone might be watching this way down the road and be curious. What is the name of the book? So that we can also.
I guess I better look up the name of the book. I was listening it on my on Scribd via audio. So that's pretty funny that I think it's This is Marketing.
This is Marketing. Okay.
It's like, that's a pretty audacious title, right? This is Marketing, but I think Seth has, he can back it up. Absolutely. I was never much of a Seth Godin fan. This is, when I saw his books going back years, I was like, what is this? These 60-page books, like, why is this a book? You know, this should be like a long blog. So I don't know, I was kind of arrogant, I guess, and thought, well, if you have something substantial to say, it should be a book, you know, a big, heavy book. And he was writing these 60 and 80 page things. So I didn't give it much attention, but I should have, because there's so much to be had from his books. But his newest one is called This Is Marketing. And as I heard it on audio, it just struck me that so much of what he was saying is similar to the stuff that we've been talking about on this chat with Anita and Matt, and conversations we've been having with folks as well. So just, again, just gets me back to this notion that people are really looking for something different. And a lot of the answers aren't different at all. They're actually stuff that has always worked, but we might have forgotten about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The businesses I had previously, one was a custom shoe business, and we were doing all the typical things until, like you mentioned, that we got some partnerships. And one of the partnerships we got actually was, we have the Canadian Football League. It's a very, very small microcosm, I guess, of what the, NFL is in the US. It's really tiny, but one of the things that really helped our business grow was when we had a partnership with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, which is part of the Canadian Football League. And we printed custom shoes. We had 4 designs that their fans could choose from. That was just going in one day and chatting with them. That's all it was, sitting down. I think we went back 3 or 4 times. We had designs. They were really interested in it. And that's all it was. It was literally knocking on the door. We're local to the area here. This is our business. This is where we're located. We think your fans might really like this. And they ate it up. It was awesome. So this just doesn't have to be for online digital businesses. That was a brick and mortar store. We just had those products, were these custom shoe designs. The business is no longer in existence. It changed into something else, and then the person took it in another direction. But that was really neat to just go in and say, we have this idea. Are you guys up for it? And they were. They loved it. They thought it was brilliant because it was really different from all the other merch that they were selling in their store, right? So talk about some of these kind of old school methods that you've gone back to. Like, what's one in particular that you've made recently that you found like, oh yeah, that's right. This feels great, and I'm glad I've gone back to it.
Gosh, well, I guess, I mean, the one, maybe it's similar to the one I was just mentioning, was just kind of the word of mouth. Yeah, that's the company I ran for about 10 or 11 years. We never had a salesperson. But maybe for one period, I think I hired a guy one time, for maybe 9 months or something, and it didn't work out. And because I was the salesperson, but it was more than that. It was our customers was the sales team. That's where everything came from, and we actively asked, and they were glad to share other universities with us and other corporate training organizations with us and make introductions. And I hadn't really thought about it because I wasn't really thinking like a marketer, but looking back on it now, that was the marketing team. That was the sales force, was our own customers, sending us leads and making introductions. And so smooth. At one point I was like, how easy is this marketing thing? It's like I don't have an MBA. Actually, I never took a business course. I don't know if I've ever said that publicly, but I've never taken a business course in my life. And I'm like, how easy is this? Our sales just keep going up every year, and 90% or more of people are saying yes. But I didn't put all the pieces together. Looking back on it now, it's just because people that loved what we were doing, how much time we saved them, how good we made them look to their bosses, were then just handing off their friends from other universities, other training organizations. And it was an easy sell. It wasn't a sell at all. It was them asking us, can we do this for them? And price became like the last thing we ever talked about. So that's one example of where to go, is, demonstrating to somebody what you can do for them. And then this issue of price, well, price is the last thing that we talk about, because of course, if I'm giving you this kind of ROI, like what would it matter if the price is $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000? You're delivering $200,000 worth of ROI.
Yeah. And if somebody, I'm the same, right? If my pain is bad enough, I will pay any amount to make that go away, whether that's personal or in business. And it's interesting. I just recorded a video before we came on here talking about making your customer experience so amazing. And by making the customer experience, like you said, maybe they paid 10 or 12,000, but got 20,000 in value, and you just took it above and beyond their expectation. Well, those people just automatically become, like you said, part of your marketing. And we know the best thing that we can do is get word of mouth referrals. Like if you want to go, the cold to hot temperature system, those people are really hot. Why? Because they've already established trust with the person referring them. So it makes sense if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have this amazing guy who does this, or this amazing company that does this. This is how they solve this problem for me, and they're fantastic to work with. If you have a similar problem, you're going to turn and say, like, please introduce me to them. You're right. It becomes so easy to quote unquote sell. Yeah. Versus what a lot of the focus is on in digital marketing and elsewhere. And it's about getting leads. It's about going out to cold audiences and trying to, do the little song and dance to get people to pay attention to you, versus really focusing on the customers you have now and really using them to get business, or get people knowledgeable about your business, your services, and what you can do for them.
Yeah, and just to swipe a little bit more about what Seth Godin was saying in his book, at least what I got out of it, was that's why the Googles of the world are so huge, why they are so many billions of dollars, because it's the easy way to go. Like you put some ads together on Facebook and you get your ads out there, and if you do it right and you experiment a little bit, you might pay $100 for the ads and get $110 back in benefits. So you're like, well, this is a no-brainer, right? This is how ads have always been since, going back decades, is if you can put in $100 of ads or $100 in stamps, if you're mailing to somebody, and you get back $110, why don't you just keep repeating that? Well, Google is making $100 and Facebook is making $100 off of you for you to earn $10. Mm. And you're like, well, I guess I don't mind handing Facebook $100 so I can make 10. And Facebook's like, bring it on. But that's, that's that route. But from what I got from Seth, it's kind of like, well, that's the easy way to do it. The tougher way to do it is actually to talk to these folks and talk to people. And it does work. And I just noticed so few people ever do this. And it occurred to me because somebody I had done a partnership with, she asked me afterwards, like I did an interview on her show for her audience and helped her audience out a bit. And she helped me on some stuff with a webinar I was doing. And then she just asked, well, hey, do you know 2 or 3 people that would like to do this? It didn't even occur. I just said, yeah, here you go. Bang, bang, bang. And I wrote to those people and I said, here's Kathy and she's awesome. And it didn't occur to me that wasn't work to me. That wasn't like extra effort. I mean, it took me an hour, but I didn't think anything of it. And because she asked, and since that time, I've been it's like, of course this has always been going on. It's not like this is any big revolutionary idea or anything, but just so few people ever ask for the recommendation.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably the tough part. It's so easy, like you said, with AdWords or Google ads and Facebook ads and all of that. Well, you become sort of faceless, nameless, right? It takes a lot of guts actually to ask somebody that, even if you have a great relationship with them. I probably, from all of our years of experience of asking and being told no, a lot of people have this fear of, well, if I ask, what will they say? What happens if they turn me down? Instead of trusting that the relationship is solid enough and that just ask. I mean, flip it around and say, well, the worst they can say is no. The best they can say is, yeah, here's one name or here's 3 names. And like you said, take an hour out of their time to provide that information for you happily. Like even with testimonials, people are so afraid to ask, hey, can you just record a quick video testimonial for me? That's it. Most people are happy to do it. But it's like we've talked about with Sideways Survey, it's got to be done at the right time. So I'm working with a client right now, and we're just ready to launch everything we've been working up to until this point. Today, everything launched. And I asked her yesterday, can you just record me a quick video about your excitement and your different thoughts going into this launch and what we've done so far? Then I want to get a video afterward. I want to compare the two. I want to see what it's like for her. That's what people want. Those testimonials are the same as, like you said, Matt, word of mouth referrals coming from your customers. But you have to ask, and it's hard. It's hard to ask. Yeah. You got to get rid of all those stories you've told yourself in your head, like, you know, oh, well, nobody will want to do it for me, or whatever stories we tell ourselves, and then just jump in and do it.
Yeah, don't get that flashback to junior high school asking, you know, that person they dance with you and having to do the walk of shame back to your friends, you know.
You've got it. And it's amazing how we think, you know, I'm just going to just shift a tiny bit, but it totally relates to this. I always wondered, I'm somebody who can pretty much talk to anybody. And I do. I talk to people in line all the time. Sometimes it works out, you know, not so great. They're not interested, but I can usually tell who I can approach. And this was my mother's technique. And I learned from her. Honestly, she could get somebody's life story in the first 10 minutes of meeting them. It was crazy what she could do. But I get like almost sick to my stomach having to pick up the phone and call somebody I don't know. And I was wondering, like, why am I like this? Like sweaty palms, you know, start dialing, put the phone down. And I'm not even talking in date. This is just about, you know, business, or I might have to call a place to ask for information. And I so want to avoid it. And it was only recently I realized it's because, what is it? Some 80% of the information we take in from people is through body language. Well, you don't get any of that with the phone. Like you get none. All you get is a voice, and you're trying to figure out through that conversation, like, are they listening to me? Are they angry with me? Are they upset with me? Are they glad to talk to me? Like you're trying to infer all this stuff that in face-to-face relationships, we would already know. And it was like, wow. So it can be the same with even asking people, you know, hey, can you do this testimonial for me? If you ask at the right time, like right before a launch or right after a launch, or maybe you just gave them like an insight that totally shifted their business, it becomes so much easier. And you know this, Matt, like even with your Sideways Survey, there is a time and a place to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it reminds me of I keep pulling in Seth's book here, but it's just been on my mind. But we all know the importance of story. Yeah, that's what all the gurus, you know, it's all the importance of story. But he said, don't forget the story that you tell yourself.
Yes.
And that might be one of these stories that you're telling yourself, you know, just what you had said about, well, what if they say no? And aren't I going to look greedy? And maybe I haven't done enough for this person. Whatever that story is you're telling yourself, it's the story of why you shouldn't ask anybody for a recommendation or for an introduction or to do a video testimonial or a written testimonial. Examine that story, because that's all it is. It's a story. It's not true. It's just your story that you're telling yourself.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been fascinating. She was very happy to record this, and she's quite a private person. So she did it. She's like, I hope it's okay. And I'm like, it's fantastic because you took the time to do this, and I so appreciate it. And, you know, I willingly give testimonials. I'm always someone who does that because I'm grateful for how they helped me. So I feel that it's my chance to give back a little bit to them, right? And or like you said, can you introduce me to someone else in your network who might benefit from what I do or is struggling with the same problem? Like that's huge, right? It's absolutely huge.
Yeah, and People don't mind. I just did somebody had asked me for a testimonial, and it was for a podcaster. So it didn't occur to me. The only thing that occurred to me was, well, I get out my video and I stand in front of Zoom here, and I gave a testimonial, and I sent that to him, and he was just blown away. He's like, "Oh, I just meant like, write me a few words." Like he was expecting a written, and I did what I thought was natural, was just stand in front of the camera and tell everybody how great this course was that he was teaching, that I had taken myself and what you get out of it. But he was really just he was just like so thankful. But to me, the person giving the testimony, I just felt like this is natural. I just wanted to do this because the stuff was so good, and it was going to be helping a lot of people, and it helped me. And he asked. So that's what your friends are thinking as well. And your customers as well. And this is another thing that we never tap into. People who have bought our stuff, we want to help, and we know this ourselves. You know, we whether it's your favorite restaurant or favorite store, favorite airline, favorite service, you want them to be better. You don't want them going anywhere. You don't want them falling apart. You want them to grow and grow, and for them to get better. And you want to help them in some way. And when they do something that you think is kind of negative or is going to hurt, like, oh shoot, I wish they would have asked me, because I would have said do it this way instead of that. This is what our family really likes. So those people are there in your audience, but they're just never asked, especially by the big companies who never ask their people anything except if you call in, talk to customer support, ask you, were you happy with customer support? But they don't take a systematic way of asking us for feedback that could help them.
So I read an article yesterday actually around the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and he was mentioning that Amazon likely won't be around in the future unless they continue to elevate the customer experience. And Amazon has been fantastic with this. Like, you think how they suggest people who got this also got that. Well, these are great things, cross sells, even upsells, but they're also really handy. Same with their whole review system, so that you can go through and see, what were some of the complaints people had? What were some of the good points around the products? And they're really encouraging their sellers then to also elevate the customer experience. There are some problems with Amazon and how it does things, as there is with anything. But I really think, with their Prime and delivery so quickly and their return policy, like I said, one of the things I love, and on Matt's recommendation, I got the same Seth Godin book. So that's two of us there, Seth, who have purchased your book. The great thing about it is that you can see the first chapter or so of the book to see if you want to buy it versus buying it sight unseen. Like, that was an Amazon thing. There's so many good things that they've done to make their customers' experience on the site even better. And sometimes it's really tough for us to figure out for our businesses, like, what can we do? I will put the links below. There's actually 3 things I recorded today, little talks about how we can do that. One of them, as Matt just mentioned, is recording a quick video, but for our customers, just to say thank you. Another one is to send out an email of thanks. Another one is to send a personal written thank you card, which, snail mail, we hardly ever use it, but that's why it's so awesome again. Remember, at one time we used to get tons and tons of junk mail, and now we don't anymore. Well, this is a perfect time then to handwrite a little note and just say thank you. Or buying a gift for your best customers and clients, something that is personal to them, because somewhere in the onboarding process or in your dealings with them, you learn something personal about either a cause that's important to them or a trip they're going to take or something. And then you get a little gift to just say, hey, I was thinking about you. It doesn't have to be expensive. So I'll put those videos below. They just go a tiny bit more detail about these things. But that customer, just think for yourself, getting an envelope in the mail from a business that you didn't expect. You open it up and it just says, thank you. We appreciate your business. Like, that's a nice thing to get. And suddenly you hold this business in a very different light than you did previously. So then when people ask you about them, you're more likely to recommend them. Just like you said, Matt, word of mouth, right?
Yeah, and the mistake that I see, and mistake I've made myself over and over again, is thinking so big. Like as you're planning things out, you're like thinking about market share and like how many, and then you stop for a moment and say, well, wait a minute. How many customers do I really need to meet like my financial goals? Mm-hmm. And when you think about it that way, you're like, well, actually I only need 12 consulting gigs, or I only need 10 people to coach or mentor. So why am I thinking about millions? How do I reach the world and with all these platforms and tools and stuff? Really, I only need like 6 customers this month. That would bring me to the goal I set. And again, Seth he calls it, jotted it down, I think he calls it the smallest viable market. I think that's the phrase he refers to, just that tiny group of people who you're going to tell a story and it matches, the dreams of that group of people, that you're not looking to sell something to the world. In fact, you're actually only looking to sell to this tiny group of people. And it seems kind of counterintuitive, but he gives a really compelling case as to why that is, to invent something that's worth making and then design and build it in a way that a few people will care deeply about this. Nice. And then from there, spreading the word. So thinking smaller as a way of getting bigger, rather than saying, how can, I become the greatest in the world in this? Because when you look at it, it's like, gosh, I mean, how many thousands of incredibly talented people out there selling incredible things, well, we've never heard of. It's a huge ocean out there, and all you need to do is, talk to the people in this little small pond that you're building.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, we've had a great discussion today. I would love in future episodes to talk a little bit more also about other pivots that Matt and I have made in our businesses to help us, like you said, reach those financial goals. And I think that's a really big point. And before I cut things off, I want to say, like, small. It makes sense, because that's really where we all start out from. Even the Amazons and all of that, they didn't start out with 100,000 customers. They started out with 1 and 2. I love, Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V's story about Wine Library TV. He said the first 180 episodes, it was his mom who watched it. And then he started to get a following, and then look how huge he is today. And even Wine Library TV, when it was sold, how many followers there were for that on YouTube. So we forget that. We get so, brought in by the millions and these huge numbers, but realizing, no, it just starts one person to another, to another, to another. And that's really how it starts. You know what else that does is it takes a whole lot of pressure off in building these big complex marketing systems and content marketing strategies. And it just keeps it simple. Get a customer, make them really happy. And then, just like you said, ask them, is there someone else they know who has a similar problem that they would, introduce you to? That's all it is. So, yeah. And Matt, any last words before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, that's just another story in your head as well. There's so many folks that try to look huge, and I know these people, and some yourself, that it's actually just, a really talented entrepreneur and her couple of VAs. That's what's behind it. But they act very big, like, oh, you're on my email list, and you're getting these automated messages and stuff, but I don't have time to, because I'm this big entity. That's a story. The story, I think, is if you don't appear really big and powerful in this, that people won't respect what you're doing or think it's worth less. But that's a story. People love that interaction. I did that in my own company back in the day, where I would send an email, and the reaction was, wow, you took time out of your day to write to me, like you big important person with no time to spare. And I didn't think about it at the time, but it's like that's what they were saying. I didn't act huge because we weren't huge. I mean, we thought we were pretty big, but in the scheme of things, we were just a tiny drop. And but they really responded to that. The head of the company just wrote me an email thanking them for something or asking them for some feedback. So do that with your customers as well. You don't have to pretend to be huge. We're not all Amazon, and Amazon was right where we were back in the mid 1990s, selling a couple of things on a really ugly looking website. Everybody starts small.
Yeah. And I just want to give a little personal story to that. There's a LinkedIn person I follow. She's actually been named one of LinkedIn's influencers, that she has several companies. I think they just had a big summit. 1,000 people showed up for it. She's a New York Times bestseller. She's just fantastic. And she has a newsletter, and I had found her on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, I like her writing, so I'm going to check out her newsletter. And it said, just sign up here. And I signed up there, and it put me in an automated system. But lo and behold, she personally answered me back. And it was exactly like you said, Matt. I was shocked. I was pretty sure it was a virtual assistant or somebody like that. And I actually wrote that. She goes, no, it's me, Sunday evening, just responding back to people who've joined my newsletter. And I was like, whoa. Because the newsletter, I think, is still fairly new, so it doesn't have a massive following yet. But what a pleasant surprise! And what did that do? It endeared me further to her, right? And we forget that the automated messages don't endear to us the same way as a personal message does. So we've got the Seth Godin book. I will put the references to those 3 videos that I just recorded in the show notes, so you have everything there. And thank you very much for joining us. As always, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that notification bell so that when we post another video that you can be notified of it. And please, 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 we want discussions. We want to know what you think. Good, bad, doesn't really matter. Just be respectful, because we need to know what you want to hear us talk about and what interests you, because after all, this is about helping others. That's why Matt and I started this, was to accelerate the journey so they don't have to go into some of the holes we fell into along the way. So, and
if we have time, the Chat with Anita and Matt Empire here, LLC, we might be too busy, at our corporate level here to respond, but we'll find the time.
Okay, thanks everyone. Take care. Bye for now.
Next time.